Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Porter County Perspective, WDSO's long-running interview segment which highlights the people, places, and organizations working to make Northwest Indiana a better place. I'm your host, CECE, and this week my guests are Jess Kern and Evan Wimmer from Raindrops Rising. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having us.
First, can you introduce yourself and tell us about how you came to be involved with Raindrops Rising and a little bit about your role there?
Yes. So I'm Jess. I am the founder and the president of Raindrops Rising. I started Raindrops Rising. I've been in the advocacy mental health field for approximately 11 years and started the foundation because there's a lot of red tape in many foundations and many organizations. And we wanted to start a foundation that was survivor focused, that created real change within the legislative bodies as well as the communities. And so we formed together. We are a survivor ran and operated organization. So a lot of what my role is in the foundation is just that, as a lot of admin and also a lot of advocacy, one-on-one advocacy and legislative work is what I focus on in my role within the foundation.
My name is Evan Wimmer. I'm the executive administrator for Raindrops Rising. And I'm also PR, graphic design, and the assistant to like 8 people. So
Evan has a busy job.
My job is admin. I am admin. Everything I do is admin. So.
And how would you describe Raindrops Rising, and what would you say its mission and vision are?
Raindrops Rising is a national advocacy nonprofit for survivors of sexual violence and human trafficking. Our mission is to have a future where survivors have the freedom and power to reclaim what has been taken from them.
How does your organization go about fulfilling that mission?
We are survivor ran and operated, so we have advocates that are resilient survivors of sexual violence. And they stop at nothing to do what needs to be done to give survivors a voice, to spread awareness regarding sexual violence within the communities, to spread awareness on the legislative side, to locate items down to if one of our survivors needs something, they're very resilient. So our passion is that mission to provide that education and awareness to the communities that we serve and to help survivors regain their strength and their voice.
And we will repeat this information later in the interview, but how can you provide any contact information for those who may be in need of services from your organization?
I would say anyone that is seeking services from our organization, please check out our website, www.raindropsrisingfoundation.com, or send us an email at admin@raindropsrisingfoundation.com, or we also have a helpline /business phone, 219-312-1817.
And that helpline is 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So you can call for resourcing or just call if you want to talk. And trained advocates do answer that line. And it's completely anonymous.
So how would you say Raindrops Rising set itself apart from other similar organizations?
I would say what sets us apart from other similar organizations is the fact, and I know I've said it before, but we are survivor ran and operated. So we're not operating off of, hey, this is a good thing to do. We've all lived it. We've all experienced it. We've all been there. We know what's wrong with the systems. We know what's wrong with the laws. And we know how to best support survivors of sexual violence because we've lived through it. And so I would say of anything, that's what sets us apart. And we take, this isn't just our work. This is our life. This is our livelihood. We're so passionate about this that this team of advocates, when I tell you they're resilient, they work day and night.
Where does the name Raindrops Rising come from?
I love telling the story. So when we started this foundation, when I say we, is I had the idea to start this foundation, and I called up some amazing women that I've worked with throughout the course of my professional career over the last decade, and they all said yes, and we came together to try to come up with a name. And we lost someone very dear to us, meaning me, a few of my friends and loved ones, And that was my kids' father, who was also a survivor. And one thing, we wanted to honor him in some way. So one thing he used to say to the kids all the time when they were younger is, I love you more than all the raindrops in the sky. And that was his thing. If he loved you, that's what he said to you. And so this was our way to honor him by calling it Raindrops. And then we thought we wanted to incorporate raindrops in, and then raindrops rising as we rise from the pain.
And when did Raindrops Rising first form, and how has the organization grown since its early days?
Raindrops Rising was officially founded on August 14th of 2024, so that's about 7 months ago. We're very new. We have made leaps and bounds in every field that we've expanded into. We started and we weren't sure exactly what we wanted to do. We knew that we wanted to do community events, and we knew that we wanted to provide educational material to those communities. And it so quickly went past that. It expanded into resourcing, into training, professional development, direct client advocacy, legislative work, and it's expanded so much and grown so beautifully in such a short period of time, and we're all so proud of it.
Yes, we're all very humbled because we could never imagine we would have grown to outside of Indiana to a national level in 7 months. So
it's awesome. Do you have any special upcoming events that you can tell us about?
Yes. So if you go onto our website, which Evan mentioned, which is raindropsrisingfoundation.com, every week we hold a virtual lunch and learn that anyone, no matter your age, no matter where you're at, can get onto at 11 a.m. Central Time. And it's free, it's virtual, and we explore topics like body dysmorphia and self-harm and sexual assault, human trafficking, child body safety. We just did one today on explaining in depth the forensic exam, and all of those are free, and we do that as an educational resource to the community. And the links to those, each Friday, and the topics are on our website. But we do have a pretty big event coming up in May. So May 9th, we're having our Survivor Benefit Gala. Now, it is kind of far. It's in southern Indiana. However, it's a black tie event. It's our first annual gala, and it's very special because all of the proceeds raised and from the gala tickets, and all of the proceeds raised during the items we will be auctioning off at the gala will go directly to our Survivor Assistance Fund, which will be able to help survivors with housing, transportation, food, and clothing. So anyone can purchase their tickets online on our website, and the tickets are inexpensive compared to most.
And the reason that it's such a far drive is the beautiful venue was donated by Darius Burke and the parcel in Newcastle, Indiana. His wife is a survivor, and they've been so supportive of us. So,
yes.
And are most of your events held online?
The lunch and learns are every Friday. The gala obviously is not. That's in person. And then we do other partnering events. We partner with the AFSP, which is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We do some partnering with local community fairs, like, we will be at community fairs and events and things like that. We love putting up resource tables at community events. So,
is Raindrops Rising seeking any volunteers? And what could people do as volunteers for you?
Yes. So we are always seeking volunteers. All you have to do is go onto our website and fill out a volunteer form. If you have to be at least 16 years of age to volunteer, that is the only stipulation, and that's not our stipulation. That's a stipulation by the state of Indiana. But we're always looking for volunteers and you can do anything from admin work to legal work to research to going out into the community, helping with community events, face painting, artistry, digital design, anything. So we're always seeking volunteers. So if you feel more comfortable doing things behind the scenes, we're always looking for volunteers. Our wonderful volunteer coordinator, Alice, is so easy to work with, and she will reach out to you usually within 48 hours if you're signing up.
So kind of shifting gears here, can you share some statistics about sexual abuse in the United States?
Yes. So at the end of 2023, these are when these statistics were public. 1 in 4 women, 1 in 6 children, and 1 in 18 men experience sexual violence in their lives. And this is reported. It is known that 60% go unreported. And at the end of 2023, there were 27.6 million reported cases of human sex trafficking, and over 60% of those cases also go unreported.
We do know that the demographic, this is always one that shocks people, is the individuals buying sex are 67% white, and over half of those are between the ages of 40 and 50. So it's not what you see on TV. It's not what you think. And there are so many men, women, and children going through this, and these numbers continue to raise every single day. We know that.
Every 68 seconds.
Every 68 seconds.
Someone experiences some type of sexual violence. It's insane that has been calculated at such a large scale. And we have statistics on sexual violence and human trafficking. And some of them overlap, some of them don't, and they're specific to themselves. All of these are on our website, free printable PDFs. On our website, under Education Library, human trafficking specific statistics are all from the FBI, and they're heartbreaking. The average life expectancy for a human trafficking victim is 7 years. And I could say more statistics, but I feel like so much of it is so emotional that just one or two has the impact that it needs to have. I could read this whole page and there would just be no need to, because just saying 1 in 4, 1 in 6, 1 in 18 is so impactful.
Yes. And all of these statistics, we update these sometimes weekly on our website, and the sexual violence statistics we pull off of the national database, and the human trafficking statistics we pull off of the FBI database. And we keep all of these statistics updated on our website. So they're absolutely free for anyone to go on there and stay educated, and also print them and spread awareness and hand them out to people.
Yeah, we get our statistics from the FBI, the National Human Trafficking Hotline, RAIN, and sometimes college research as well. We've pulled a lot of statistics from the University of Minnesota. It seems random, but they have a really good research program.
Mm-hmm.
And is there anything that you're surprised about? Are you surprised about these statistics? And if so, what surprises you?
So again, all of us are survivors, so it doesn't surprise us. It breaks our hearts that the numbers keep going up every year. And that's why we're so resilient in doing what we're doing, is trying to make more people aware of it, because the reason the numbers keep rising is because people aren't aware of the numbers. And so I wouldn't really say they surprise us. We are all survivors, and we know we're part of these statistics. So
I definitely think that we're not surprised anymore. I know that what we say surprises other people, and if that's something to mention. I mean, people don't want to hear that the majority of people buying sex are married white men in their 40s. So I think that we might be past it, but there's always going to be that surprise from the people that we're sharing with.
And do you believe that the statistics that you mentioned are accurate? And is there a way to know for sure that it's higher or lower? And if so, how?
Yeah, so I do believe that they're accurate, mostly because they are pulled from federal databases. Yes. But I also want to mention 2% of all sexual violence reports are false. 2. And within that 2%, the two main highest percentages of falsified reports are custody cases and adolescents. So in that, you have an adolescent who is maybe acting out for a different reason and might falsify information, or you have parents using sexual violence allegations in custody battles. 2%, and one of them has nothing to do with the child. So.
And do you believe that there is a stigma attached to coming forward about sexual assault?
Oh, absolutely. That's a lot of what we do, is we try to cancel that stigma quite a bit. Part of that is just us telling our stories. I have never been to an event, and I've done this for a while, to where I've spoken publicly that one person, at least a lot of the times it's more, hasn't came up to me afterwards and disclosed, because they hear me tell my story. And so then that gives them the strength to tell theirs. I still, if it gives you any context, I have been doing this work for almost 11 years, and I've been on my healing journey through all of this for 15 years, and I still get people telling me I'm a liar. Communities will do that, and I have proof. And we have, this happens because they're saying, oh, well, you just want it, why would you say that? Or the case gets thrown out and it wasn't proven in court. That doesn't matter. There has to be, again, people aren't going to lie about this. People aren't going to lie. People aren't going to talk about the details of it. They're not going to lie about this. There's a lot of shame surrounding coming forward, or a lot of bullying, I think, that comes along with that, especially with adolescents. So we try to talk as much as we can at schools and with education institutions, and not just with the legislative bodies, but we try to talk as much as we can in the communities to saying that this is why it's going on. The more people that talk about it, even though it's uncomfortable to talk about it, is how we get it to stop. It's not going to stop until we get more people to start talking about it and create safe environments for them to do so.
I'm going to steal your metaphor.
Go for it.
Jess says all the time that if you're a thief and you're going to steal something from a store, are you going to go into a store with cameras or no cameras? And in terms of sexual violence, Indiana has no cameras.
Yeah.
And the work that we do is putting up cameras. If people are aware that we're around here, we're passing out information, we're educating our communities, then they're going to move on. We're going to flush people out, and this won't happen as much. Awareness is power. Knowledge is power. And the way to stop this is to talk about it.
Yes.
And why do you believe that the stigma exists?
Because people don't want to talk about it. Because it's a taboo topic. We even run into it, like I said, at the State House. People don't want to vote on bills to protect victims because it's much easier to pass a speed limit law. Because people don't want to talk about the hard things, but that's why it keeps happening, is because people don't want to talk about it. But the more we get people to talk about it, even children, even people it hasn't happened to, the more we get people to talk about it, it stops happening. Children, and when I say children, I mean anyone under the age of 16. When children are taught about body safety and are taught about safe environments, they're 87% less likely to be assaulted. Just that statistic alone should make you want to talk about it.
And that means just so much of this could be prevented. Like 87 is a big number in the statistic world for anybody that doesn't know a lot about statistics. And 87% is less likely. So that means teaching children the names for their body. If they're old enough to know that this is my arm, they're old enough to know that this is my breast, and that nobody should touch me without my consent, and that I can decide what happens and what doesn't happen with my body.
Yes.
And having that awareness helps keep them safe.
Yes.
And we tell parents even. We say all the time, they want to say, this is uncomfortable for me. If it's uncomfortable for you for about 5 minutes while you help your child understand, and that saves your child from experiencing years of sexual trauma, I don't really care.
Yeah.
And you've talked a lot about advocacy. Do you think that's one of the most important things for these statistics to be lowered? And is there anything else?
That's a good question. I mean, advocacy, speaking about it, talking about it, even when you're uncomfortable, will help erase these stigmas and will help bring these statistical numbers down, because perpetrators are not going to perpetrate if they know they're going to get caught. The reason that they do is because they know they're not going to get caught. And if you, again, like the analogy that I've gave that I said all the time, if you're going to do something, you don't want to do it with 50 witnesses. And that's what's happening, is they know there's a high chance they're going to get away with it because of the way the laws are, because no one wants to talk about it. And if they know that, hey, I might get caught, they're not going to do it.
And why do you believe that so few survivors of sexual assault come forward about their experiences?
So I've experienced this quite a bit. I have quite a few clients that tell their story publicly, and I have quite a few clients that don't. We even have a few of our board members that do this work but won't tell their story publicly. And it's because either it's a family member that they don't want to lose the rest of their family because their family will not believe them, or they are so scared about how society will react to them, especially males. It's so hard with males. I'm not saying it's not hard with females, because it definitely is. I didn't come forward until I was 29 years old, and I'm 44. So it took me a long time to come forward for those reasons. Just the fear of, will anyone believe me? Will anyone stand by me? Will I still have my family? Will I still have the people in my life if I come forward? When in reality, all of those things is sexual violence is never the fault of the survivor. So those conversations should not even be taking place. And what I always tell my clients and my board members and everybody that will listen is I'm like, if those people aren't going to believe you and are going to walk away from you, then you don't need them in your life because they're just as bad as the perpetrator.
Yeah. And if there has any knowledge of the court system or the process and that it takes to persecute or anything like that, then they might be turned away from that because of how hard it is. We have direct clients that have struggled for decades to get justice for themselves or for family members, and it's so hard. It's so hard to get anything proved. Sexual assault itself is almost impossible to prove in court, and that's why these cases struggle so hard, because if there isn't direct evidence, meaning hard DNA, video, documented proof, then the case isn't going to go anywhere.
Indiana has below a 2% conviction rate for sexual assault.
There was 2 human trafficking convictions in all of 2024.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's 10 in all time. All-time human trafficking convictions for Indiana is 10, compared to 450 in Texas. You heard me, Texas.
Yeah, yeah.
And how do you think that our society could be like proactive in creating an environment that's safe enough for survivors to come forward?
Educate yourself.
Educate yourself. And 3 simple words. 3 simple words. I believe you. Again, I've been telling my story publicly for 10 years, and I can tell you it's still hard. I do it. I do it every day, but it's still hard. No one is going to do that to lie. I believe you is so powerful. Just saying, I believe you and you're safe with me are some of the most powerful things that anyone, even a stranger, can say to a survivor. Because then they feel safe to come forward and tell their story. The reason so many don't is because of that fear of no one believing them.
And also, we need to, obviously this is bigger in the terms of gender-based violence, but we need to seriously hone in on gender-based violence in terms of sexual violence, because it should not be this discriminatory in terms of, oh, if you're not a cookie cutter woman with long hair, then that couldn't have happened to you. We need to be far more accepting of survivorship and the fact that 1 in 4, 1 in 6, 1 in 18 is not picky. This is happening to everybody. This is women. This is men. This is children. This is trans people. This is non-binary individuals. This is everywhere.
And expanding on that, what are some things that you would not recommend saying to victims of sexual assault that can make them feel?
We have a whole flyer on that. We have a whole flyer on that on our website. But I love this topic because, number one, if a survivor is telling their story, don't argue with them. It's so hard for them to talk. But I will say just a few things.
Let's go back and forth.
We could go back and forth with this. So number one, what were you wearing? Because it doesn't matter. If I want to walk down the street naked, it gives no one the right to even say anything to me. That doesn't make it my fault. Never ask what were you wearing.
Did you scream?
Yeah, never ask, did you scream? Sometimes it doesn't mean you didn't do anything wrong if you screamed. Were you using alcohol or drugs? Doesn't matter. It does not matter. That does not give anyone the right to violate on your body. Yeah. Never ask what happened. Never ask details. Okay, this isn't for your own gratification. If the survivor wants to tell you details, they will. But the control is with them. Again, mainly focusing on the things. Don't ask things like, why were you there? That's another. It doesn't matter why I was there.
And this is all centered in, the theme here is victim blaming. Don't victim blame. And if you feel as though it's not a big enough problem, things like that, like what were you wearing, is victim blaming. That's saying that whatever they were wearing, that's their fault. They asked for it. They invited it. They didn't. That's not them. If someone makes the decision to perpetrate against another human being, it doesn't matter what they were wearing.
Yes. And I want to be clear on that is, I want to explain something really quick, is we go back to men. It's so hard for men to come forward because of the societal stigma, health education class that you took back in like 3rd, 4th grade. Okay, your body physically responds to stimuli. So men can be raped just as easily as women can. And erasing that stigma within our society is huge, because they will say, well, you had to have enjoyed it. You were a man. It couldn't have happened unless you enjoyed it. That is false. It's false information.
And what impact does sexual assault often have on victims, which negatively affect their lives long term?
Okay, that's a really good one too. So, believe it or not, sexual violence, the most common thing is it can cause severe PTSD. So, post-traumatic stress disorder, for those that don't know, it can cause severe depression. It can cause body dysmorphia. That's huge with survivors. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's not feeling comfortable no matter what you do in your own body, in your own clothing. It can cause self-harm, suicidality. We partner with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention for that reason, is I have not yet in my whole career of doing this met a survivor that hasn't attempted. So that is a big one. Also, it can cause addiction, because most survivors of human trafficking, number one, let's talk about human trafficking, were force-fed opiates and narcotics. So they became addicted to those things. Survivors of sexual violence usually turn to addiction, not because they want to use illicit substances, but because it's the only way they have of coping, because they don't have anyone in their life. So they use illicit substances to cope, which can cause long-term damages and more societal stigmas surrounding addiction. It can also develop into cardiac problems. It can develop into kidney issues. It can develop into female reproductive issues. It can develop into high blood pressure, high sodium levels, hypothyroidism. There are a number of things that can develop into. And what we say all the time is no one ever asks why. No one ever stops and asks why. I tell this story all the time. Seems like a good place to insert it. I have a client of mine that I testified in court for because he was facing 20 years for aggravated battery, and he was an addict. So he had been in and out of rehab, faced 20 years for aggravated battery, and they were going to send him away for 20 years. And no one ever stopped to ask why. They just kept sending him to jail, kept sending him to rehab. And he was 27 years old. So in my eyes, he was a kid. He had me come to testify in court for him because what no one ever stopped to ask was he went through approximately 10 years of severe sexual torture by his grandmother. Because of my testimony, the judge gave him a second chance. And this individual is one of the least violent, most loving, gentle persons I know. But on paper, he's a drug addict felon. He's not.
He's got a house and a dog.
And a car, and he's an amazing person. But they were going to throw him away because of what society saw him as, because no one ever stopped to ask why. Why is he doing all of these things? And the same thing happened with me in my life. I experienced those same things. Everyone saw me as a violent person. Everyone saw me as an addict. And no one ever stopped to ask why. Why is she so angry? Why is she doing these things? And once they did, I got better.
And I know you mentioned earlier in the interview preventing sexual assault and sexual violence is really fueled by education. And I know you mentioned educating children. So what age do you think people should begin learning about body safety and the definitions of assault and consent?
There's age-appropriate sexual education at all ages. If your child, like I said before, if your child is 5 years old and knows that this is my arm, you should start age-appropriately teaching them that this is my penis, this is my breast. They should know those things. And that is taboo. We don't want to talk about that because those are explicit. However, it's not. It's not explicit because it might have been before this was such a big problem, but we're to a point where we're so past that. And if your child knows those things and says, hey, I learned this when I was 4 years old that nobody's ever allowed to touch me here except for me, and this is my body, and I can decide what happens to it, that is okay. And there is, I always forget the name of the organization that developed it. I'm so sorry. But Australia has implemented a 12-year, all through school, program for age-appropriate sexual education. And it's just that. I mean, you're 5 years old, you understand that the parts of your body and what they do and how you can protect them. And then maybe in middle school, you start to understand reproductive health and all of these things. And then high school, you start talking about STIs and understanding consent deeper and knowing, okay, here's actual sexual health and not just focusing on abstinence. If your sexual education course only consists of don't have sex, that's not saving anybody.
Teach them what consent is. Australia, since implementing that program, their numbers have went way down in regards to that. So I think that's something important to mention. For years, as our society has thought of those words as bad words. But if a child goes to court and they say, he touched my hoo-ha, that case is going to get thrown out.
And it has.
It has. We've seen it happen. Children need to know the proper terms for their body.
And could you give us the complex definitions of those terms, specifically assault and consent?
Yeah, you can do consent.
Right. So consent is allowing something to happen to oneself. That is the most simple, direct definition. And this isn't always sexual touch or whatever it might be. Consent is most simply, in any scenario ever, I am allowing this to happen. Mm-hmm. And if that is not there, then it doesn't happen. And it shouldn't. This can be kissing, touching, sexual touch, hugging. Consent is key.
And consent can be what?
Revoked.
At any time.
Mandatory, voluntary, and revocable.
Yes, that is something we teach about quite often. And informed is, even if you say, well, I told him I wanted to have sex with him and then I changed my mind, you can change your mind in the middle. That's very, very important. And under the law, the difference between, when you're talking about definitions, so rape is penetration under the law, and sexual assault is anything else that is not penetrative. But sexual violence is all of those things. Sexual violence is anything like that that doesn't have informed consent.
Any unwanted sexual contact.
Yes.
And where could parents and guardians turn for resources for teaching body safety and prevention of child sexual assault?
Yes. So us, organizations like us, there's 100 nonprofits that are just like ours, that some also focus specifically on children. Fairhaven Rape Crisis Center is a perfect example. Mm-hmm. Find somewhere that does something like we do. We have referrals. Contact us. Mm-hmm. We can help you. But it's so vital. Find someone. If you know your child is starting to go to school, or maybe these are things your child's developing, let them know things. Let them learn things. And if you don't have if you can't explain it yourself, or maybe you don't have the words to, there are organizations like ours who provide educational materials. We're working on a video series for children. Yeah. That's 5-minute short videos to start conversations with their parents. Mm-hmm. They watch the video and then they talk about it. And these are things on age-appropriate sexual education, like puberty, sexual assault. We have one coming out on porn, things like that help children understand these concepts in a safe and productive way.
So if you feel uncomfortable, parents or guardians that feel uncomfortable, this is something like you could go onto our website and watch one of those videos with your child, with your niece, with anyone, and your grandchild, and then talk about the video. So it's a way to open up the conversation, because it's so important, not just like I've mentioned with consent, but also with things like puberty and pornography and online spaces and safety spaces in that, or how to be, cautious regarding, watching for the signs and symptoms with parents and guardians, watching for the signs, because it's not always someone you know. Most of the time it is someone you know, but it is more often someone in a position of authority over the child. So this can mean a teacher, a coach, counselor, anyone. So we want to be very careful with parents noticing the signs with their children of, hey, is my child, my child doesn't have any money, but they come home with a new laptop. Okay, that's grooming. someone's grooming them. Okay, there's a reason that either they stole it or someone gave it to them. But I wouldn't want to know why someone's giving my 12-year-old a brand new MacBook.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? There's a reason behind that.
And to elaborate on grooming, there is a lot of back and forth on the definition of grooming. Grooming is the process of indoctrinating a child into violence.
Yes.
Whether that be physical or sexual. In this context, we're talking about sexual violence. This is an adult, a person who has authority, basically indoctrinating a child with exposure to sexual content before they need to be.
Yes.
And that can happen at any age before 16 years old in Indiana.
And grooming is a crime.
So as we near the end of the interview, by the way, thank you guys so much for coming in today.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else about Raindrops Rising that you would like to mention that we haven't talked about yet, or any points that you'd like to reiterate?
I don't think that there's anything specific that we haven't mentioned already, but I do want to reiterate, knowledge is power. Educate yourself. It goes down with awareness. The only way to get these numbers down is to talk about it. Educate yourself. Educate your family. Educate your friends. Learn things and share them with the people you love to keep everyone you know safe.
Yes, and if you don't know how to do that, like I said, this is why we have a team of amazing advocates, and I just want to, they deserve a shout out at every chance we can, because they are some of the most powerful, strong, resilient women I've ever met in my life. And they go to schools and they go to community events and they go anywhere that they're asked to go to raise awareness. So if you need help educating yourself, reach out and ask us. There are so many organizations like ours, but, reach out to someone and just educate yourself. I think that's the main thing. And again, if we don't have a resource for you, we'll get it. This is again, something that we have been through. We are survivors and we're here for survivors with a focus on survivors. So.
And one more time, could you give us information about how those interested in either supporting your organization or those who need help of services can reach out to you?
Our website is www.raindropsrisingfoundation.com. Our business email is admin, ADMIN, at raindropsrisingfoundation.com. And our phone number is 219-312-1817.
And again, I just want to mention that phone number is 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, whether you need resources or you just need somebody to anonymously talk to. It's not someone sitting answering that phone call. They are trained advocates in crisis intervention and sexual assault response answering that phone. So we don't report it. It's completely anonymous. The only time we're ever going to report anything is if you say you're going to harm yourself or someone else. But if you just want to talk about something that happened to you 30 years ago or something that happened to you yesterday, our advocates are trained to give you resources and talk. So please, utilize that phone number. You're not alone.
Thank you guys so much for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
This is a very important issue, and thank you guys for doing what you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, that is going to wrap up this week's edition of the Porter County Perspective. This has been CeCe Post from WDSO, and my guests this week were Evan and Jess from Raindrops Rising. One more time, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, CeCe. We appreciate it.
Of course.